OTAs are going on around the National Football League, and Bloom, that's right. I've been out at Broncos OTAs. I can barely say anything of what I've seen. I might drop some hints. But as we spin around the National Football League, we have to go to Kansas City. And Kansas City is where we start because you're going to see a lot of positive news reports this offseason. And Bloom, it's a little bit trippy. And for me to use that word, you know it is trippy. Kadarius Toney keeps getting hype. Like a lot of hype. It seems like every week. And now that OTAs are going on, the Kadarius Toney hype train's even larger unless DeAndre Hopkins is added to that team.
Right. Yeah, I think that focusing on Kansas City is a good place to focus. It's a good thing to do. It's smart to do. Why? Well, Jerick McKinnon won championships for us last year. Was Jerick McKinnon even signed on this date last year? I don't think so, but he was recently signed. He's back. And maybe the simple answer is Jerick McKinnon. We're chasing our tail. Which wide receivers are going to be? Rice, Moore, maybe Hopkins, maybe Toney, maybe year 2 with Valdez-Scantling. Who knows? Maybe we're chasing our tail and we're overlooking the obvious answer. But the reality is this quarterback and his efficiency and his productivity with this surrounding coaching, play design, etc., can create league winners out of nothing, out of some stuff, like Back to the Future. Just put a banana peel in there, boom, league winner. So absolutely it could be Kadarius Toney. What are we learning about Kadarius Toney? That he's really talented. Well, we kind of already knew that. But he's staying on the field. He's endearing himself to the team. But see, so we can talk about the Rosses, right? John Ross, remember him? He's in Kansas City. He's on their roster. He's still really fast and really quick. If you go back and watch a few of the clips of John Ross, NFL John Ross, you will see somebody that is, dare I say, Tyreek Hill-like in a vacuum. If you just see his quicks and his speed. Now, does he employ them? Does he have the dog in him like Tyreek Hill does? Well, that's why John Ross has just been bouncing around the league and not doing very much. But the raw tools are there. The raw traits are there. Justin Ross, we already know he had first-round traits, first-round tools. So there's a lot of possible answers. And Cease, I think it just all spells out. Listen to everything coming out of Kansas City. Watch what's going on in the preseason. During the season, be ready to pivot. Because Patrick Mahomes is a kingmaker. We're just not sure who the king is going to be.
Yeah, who's he going to crown? And are they going to get DeAndre Hopkins? As we'll move into that topic, Bloom, because the Bills and the Chiefs seem to be the most interested. He's open to the Pats. He's open to the Browns. These are all conversation points. But the Bills and the Chiefs are 30th and 31st in salary cap space. They don't have a lot of room. Less than $1 million, I think, for Kansas City. And Buffalo has like $1.4 million in cap space. Well, that's not going to get it done. So as we sit here, per this recording, where the hell is DeAndre Hopkins going to go?
Maybe it's up to him. It sounds like, and this makes sense, right, that the Bills and the Chiefs are looking at this as not about necessarily adding Hopkins, but making sure the other doesn't add Hopkins, right? It's not just that you added DeAndre Hopkins to your roster. It's that one of your main rivals, one of your main opponents is not adding DeAndre Hopkins. Both these teams are interested. Sounds like they were both in, according to Jeremy Fowler, both in trade talks. And as far as the cap goes, Cease, we know these days they can sign him to a 7-year, $400 million deal with 6 voidable years at $40 million a year plus $10 million incentives and spread out the $20 million they're going to pay him, or 17. If Odell Beckham's $15 million, Hopkins should be around $15 million for this year. We'll see. The market's weird, but they can spread out those cap hits over future years. The whole pay can be a signing bonus. So I'm not so worried about the cap room. The cap wizards can handle that. It's really about the will of these teams to deny the other an asset. And then maybe in the end, it's about Hopkins. And for Hopkins, it's been a long road, but if both of these teams want him and are willing to fight over him, then it's going to increase the bottom line, and it's going to increase the power he has to decide this. Like you said, the Browns are there. The Browns, certainly after what happens with Deshaun Watson. See, my brain wants to put them back together again.
Right.
After what happened with Deshaun Watson, we can't count the Browns out to do something like name your price, DeAndre. We'll meet it. And the Patriots are interesting from a fantasy football perspective, simply because, Cease, who is going to catch the ball there? Who is going to? Somebody's got
throw
to
the ball
do
there.
something, right? Right.
Okay, if you're Mac Jones, you're almost begging for DeAndre Hopkins because you'd actually kind of look okay. I don't like Mac Jones.
Right.
I don't really like Bailey Zappi, but that's the larger question for New England, in my opinion.
Right. There's a lot of questions in New England's offense, but they have a lot of room to grow going from Joe Judge and Matt Patricia to Bill O'Brien, a real offensive coordinator. And if Hopkins is strictly looking at numbers and setting himself up for another contract with numbers, maybe it is the Patriots. And we know the Patriots have been willing to bring on players who might not have played well with others, but have high football character and fit into the Do Your Job program. And maybe that's the chapter DeAndre Hopkins wants to add. If he wants a championship, though, Bills or Chiefs.
Yeah, Bills or Chiefs. And then you mentioned Cleveland. What's interesting to note is ClevelandBrowns.com is reporting Elijah Moore has been a, quote, constant target, close quote, for Deshaun Watson during OTAs. It seems like with as much as we talk about and as much as the fantasy world talks about wide receivers and players emerging, nobody really talks about Elijah Moore as much as they should, especially if he is a constant target.
Yeah, when we thought of the Browns' offense in years past, what do we thought? Running back. Right. Who's the running back? That's what we really care about. Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's still there. Who's the backup? Jerome Ford. Or at least Jerome Ford will get every opportunity to be the backup. Right. So maybe we should spend this time talking about Jerome Ford. Deshaun Watson, and that was obviously a massive story in the past. Now it's dwarfed by other stories that have happened more recently. But part of the reason that we're not thinking about Deshaun Watson, we're not thinking about the Browns passing game, is Deshaun Watson was terrible last year. Like Zach Wilson, terrible. Like really bad. Depending on your metric, he was really bad. Now you could say give him an off season. There's not all these distractions, not all this stuff swirling around him. He can concentrate and focus on football. Well, then, yeah, of course, we're going to look at Amari Cooper. We're going to remember Cedric Tillman, probably Amari Cooper's replacement. Donovan Peoples-Jones. But as you said, we forgot all about Elijah Moore, who at one time was an it wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
I even myself made a few dynasty trade offers for him because it seemed like one of those players that was just vastly underrated and really fit into what the NFL is looking for. See, doesn't Elijah Moore actually fit right beside all those receivers that went in the first round this year, except for Quentin Johnston? But the type of receiver, he fell to the early second round, but maybe in this year's draft, he would have been a first-round pick. So it makes sense to think of him as a player. When I think of Deshaun Watson, I always think of Hunter Renfrow, right? This is why I love Kiki Cutie. Go ahead. I don't have the socks on right now. I'll get the socks on the next time we talk about Kiki Cutie. He's still bouncing around the league somewhere, I think. But it's that slot receiver. It's that layup, right? That's what Elijah Moore can offer Deshaun Watson. You have Peoples-Jones on the outside. You have Cooper on the outside. Of course, you have David Njoku ripping the seam. But absolutely Elijah Moore is a player. How much... solve for X being how much of Elijah Moore's underperformance with the Jets was the lack of a quality quarterback and just the lack of a fit with this coaching staff. So with the Browns coaching staff, with Deshaun Watson, it's absolutely something to watch because I do think Deshaun Watson is one of those players who, whatever the game plan is, whatever the emphasis is, he's going to play his game, and his game might be doing a lot of pitch and catch with Moore.
Speaking of his game, we saw Michael Gallup last year, Bloom. But did we really see Michael Gallup? Because he did not look like himself. Well, good news coming out of Cowboys camp is the fact that Michael Gallup is kind of going to be used everywhere. Expanded role ahead for Michael Gallup. Looks good, could run a more varied route tree in 2023 after running too many go routes in 2022. That's according to Mike McCarthy. So, yeah, Michael Gallup, healthier, further away from the knee injury that he suffered in late 2021 that really did impact him in 2022. Now, with a more varied role, I kind of like the sounds of that because people, again, when you look at Dallas, people are almost forgetting about Michael Gallup.
Yeah, they are. And maybe that's not off base because they did also get Brandon Cooks. So you add that in. They also have some tight ends. We know the tight ends are going to play a role in this. Yeah, but they're all the same. but they are going to play a role. They are going to get a significant piece of the pie in this passing game. And then we know with Kellen Moore heading down to Los Angeles and Brian Schottenheimer as the offensive coordinator, they're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball. We'll see how that works out with Tony Pollard. Check out last week's On the Couch with Adam Harstad. We start out with a hot Tony Pollard take there. But there's going to be Tony Pollard. Then does this lead us back, Cease, to Dak Prescott? Do you remember when Dak Prescott was the elite fantasy football quarterback for about 4 games before he broke his ankle? Now, that also was for a Cowboys team that had terrible, pre-Dan Quinn, terrible defense. So is that what created Dak Prescott, fantasy superstar? Is the loss of Kellen Moore going to deflate him even further after he was not much different than, I don't know, Kirk Cousins or someone like that for fantasy football last year? But you add in a Brandon Cooks, you give him a healthier Michael Gallup. Does Dak Prescott return to prominence? Because, see, I think week to week, CeeDee Lamb is going to be the one guy we can trust in this passing game.
Yes.
We might not be able to trust now best ball. Michael Gallup becomes more interesting. Michael Gallup's a good player. They paid him like he's a good player. I think he's a good player. But I don't know if this Cowboys passing game will give us consistency from the receivers. It may give us more consistency from Prescott.
Yeah, so let's watch out for that and keep an eye on that situation. Just like we'll be watching our beloved Pittsburgh Steelers and Allen Robinson working as a slot receiver. I promised myself, Bloom, I would not get excited about Allen Robinson anymore. Somewhere I feel like our buddy Matt Harmon's like, you should get more excited. Yeah, Allen Robinson working as a slot. That moves the needle, so to speak, for me.
A little bit.
Something to watch.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, see, what do you do with an aging cornerback? This is like maybe Patrick Peterson can play this, right? What do you do with an aging cornerback who can't necessarily match up with wide receivers one-on-one outside anymore?
Put him at safety or zone him up.
Put him at safety. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? Allen Robinson knows a lot of football. Allen Robinson has accomplished a lot on football fields. Maybe he can't beat one-on-one top outside boundary corners anymore. But give him the two-way go in the slot. Now you have a player who can use more of his experience to create productivity and not have to rely on physical tools, which aren't what they used to be. So I do think you're right, Cease, that's interesting. Just the Steelers' offense in general. We're going to watch and listen for news about Broderick Jones. How ready is he? It's tough. We haven't heard about too many shut down offensive tackles in their first year. It's a steep learning curve. And Seattle had some success with rookie tackles last year, so it's not possible. That's the main thing the Steelers need to shore up. You add in Darnell Washington also. He's as big as a tackle almost. His buddy, these guys played next to each other at Georgia. So if this offensive line firms up, if you have this running game, which was trending up, by the way, real interesting to notice Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren as a duo. Something to think about there. We know this team is going to want to run the ball. We know this team is going to want to set up Kenny Pickett, George Pickens with the deep balls outside, Deontay Johnson getting open at will, hopefully not dropping too many balls, Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington in those 2 tight end sets. And then Allen Robinson. And I guess that's another thing that sets up a little bit of a tension, right? How often is Darnell Washington on the field? How often is Allen Robinson on the field? Neither of them are going to be fantasy commodities if everybody stays healthy. But what they do tell us is this offense should be improved. It was miserable at the beginning of the year last year. It got better as a running offense. Now, with the addition of Robinson, with the addition of more modes, with the addition of better pass blocking, hopefully, fingers crossed, it could become an actual functional, competent offense.
Yeah, I think of Robinson's impact on Kenny Pickett. Just giving, here's a security blanket, son. Like,
right.
Why, thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much for that. So we'll continue to watch that as the OTA news cycle continues. A couple of quick ones, Bloom, before I jump into Jerry Jeudy. And as much as I could say, and oh my God, is it ridiculous what you can't say now. But anyway, Detroit's pleased with Jameson Williams and his progress. Miles ahead of where he was last season. That's per Dan Campbell, which makes me go, no kidding. Sorry, Joe, I wanted to say something else, but I was like, he was coming off a knee injury last year, so of course he's miles ahead. Got to worry about the suspension. Anyway, and then back to Kansas City and we're going to talk about everything, but Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in great shape, and he's stepping up, and I'm like, aren't we done with that? Like, seriously, with the Clyde Edwards-Helaire stuff. So, yeah, there's some positive OTA news about a Jameson Williams, about a Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Williams is fine. We love Williams. Edwards-Helaire, I'm just like, is he going to be on another team? Because then I might actually get excited.
Right. But again, going back to the first take, the kingmaker, Patrick Mahomes, it has been Jerick McKinnon. Can Clyde Edwards-Helaire do some of the things Jerick McKinnon does or has done? Well, that's why they drafted him, to do those kinds of things in the passing game, in space, against light boxes, against defenses that are stressed out, trying to contain Patrick Mahomes in the passing game. So I think you'd be silly to just write him off completely and say, not even in the 20th round would I take Clyde Edwards-Helaire, simply because he's in an offense that you just need execution and competence to create production. You don't need to add value. And he's in a prove-it year for him, a year that is probably going to determine his range of future career earnings in the NFL. So arguably he's been underutilized as a receiver. Isn't that why they drafted him? Isn't that what looked so good at LSU? His ability as a receiver, as a route runner, as someone sometimes detached from the formation. Now, there could be reasons for that. There are things we're peeking through keyholes. So there could be very good reasons for that. It might not be irrational. It might be very rational. But I think we have to continue to listen for that drumbeat, like you say, Cease. Jameson Williams, I mean, just go back and watch him in Alabama, and you know that he is that player who takes the top off of defenses. And I'm excited about Detroit. I know I say often we have to watch closely the offenses that are in a changeover. But let's also give some due to offenses that are in year 2 after a changeover.
Yes.
Because as they said, that's when they become fluent in the language. That's whenever you're not just trying to learn the offense, but now we have the foundation of the offense. And remember how good this offense was last year. Now you're adding a healthy Jameson Williams after 6 games. You're adding Sam Laporta. You're adding Jahmyr Gibbs. They didn't have a player like Jahmyr Gibbs last year. You're adding these players, and if the offensive coordinator, if Johnson, can devise plays where, again, what do we know Jared Goff is good at? Making quick decisions.
Yep.
Or decisions that are pre-digested for him. That's fine. He's fine. He's good at that, right? He's actually a reasonable bargain at quarterback when you're just looking for somebody to take the offense from the whiteboard to the field. And if all of these different players that create mismatches, that stretch the defense in all the dimensions that a defense has to defend, whether it's man coverage or zone coverage, whether it's against the run, whether it's trying to play as a run concept the correct way, defenses are going to be so off balance against these Lions. So absolutely, again, I'm going to bring up best ball drafts. Jameson Williams should, if he's healthy, be good for 4 or 5 long touchdowns, maybe a game with 2 long touchdowns. In the games where they can't figure out how to defend Jameson Williams, because it's a pick your poison, right? Okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to contain the running game? Are you going to use your best athletes on guys like Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs? Are you going to play too high shell to take away Jameson Williams and let the running game go off? Week to week, the answer might change, but I do think you're going to see this Lions offense that was already extremely efficient get even more efficient, and Jameson Williams is one of the reasons why.
And that is good news for you. Quickly, before I get to Jerry Jeudy, Travis Etienne is open to help. And, well, he's going to get it, because one of those storylines to watch, preseason watch list, again, is Tank Bigsby. And what does that look like in Jacksonville? Etienne, lead back, but is it committee style? Is it 70-30? Like, what sort of split are we looking at? Travis himself is saying he's open to help.
Yeah, I'd say bet the over for Bigsby. What kind of role did James Robinson have to open last year? James Robinson, who might not even make the Patriots roster. James Robinson was getting touches and occasionally was productive, with Etienne then taking over. And at first, Etienne looked like he was going to be a league winner. And then, well, Etienne leveled off at not a league winner, let's say. Now, you have a 3rd-round draft pick. And Cease, again, if the Jags took Tank Bigsby in the 3rd round, where was he on their board?
2nd round.
Top. Yeah. They like him. They take Bigsby with an intent to play him. Okay. Are there things that Bigsby is better at than ETN? I think yes. I think the answer is yes. Is ETN even maybe a player we've overrated? Probably. So I think that this could easily become something like the 50-50 committee we saw early last year. It's up to Bigsby. So that's why, again, it's so important to pay attention to the news coming out of OTAs. But if Bigsby is, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, ETN hasn't been the receiver that he was ticketed to be. He hasn't been the runner that he was ticketed to be. I think Bigsby probably has. See, so you could probably even look at ETN and say, what's missing from ETN's profile? And they looked at Bigsby as a player who could do some of those things. So I think Bigsby is being very underrated right now in fantasy circles. And I think that ETN is probably being overrated because the pick of Bigsby shows me that ETN's not the only one who is open to him getting help. It's the Jags themselves that are saying, no, you need some help.
And Dynasty gyms are saying, Snoop the loop.
Yeah.
Sorry. Things change quickly.
We barely knew you.
Exactly. Things change quickly around here, just like they changed in Denver. Okay, so Sean Payton's new media rules, Bloom, are this. Okay. If he doesn't talk about it, you can't talk about it. No matter what we
Can we do charades about it? Sounds like two words.
What I had come up with, I said, how about I start using the numbers of old players? So I could be like, wow, Brandon Stokely, I remember that day he had a big catch and double coverage for a touchdown.
Right.
And then you're like, well, wait a second. 14, that's Courtland Sutton. He's talking about Courtland Sutton. I'm not talking about Courtland Sutton. But if I were to do that, that might be something I do. Can't have our phones out at all during practice. Can't live tweet during practice, which I think is dumb anyway, because I'm trying to watch practice. I'll tweet when special teams are out there, but you can't have your phone out. You can't live tweet during practice, whatever. We're never giving away formations or trick plays or anything like that. But unless Sean Payton or one of the other players at the podium talks about it, you can't bring it up. There's a couple plays I'm thinking of that I can't say they even existed. So whatever, Sean Payton go win, and nobody will care about this. But it does kind of complicate things. When I'm watching Jerry Jeudy, he had a little bit of a thigh bruise. That's not a big deal. I will say, because it was spoken about, the timing looks very good. And as I've alluded to on this show, somebody's going to get some pretty good numbers as a wide receiver. I don't know who that is yet. Because, and I tweeted this, and they didn't ask me to take it down, so I guess it's okay. Sutton looked explosive. Now, step back from that a little bit. Courtland Sutton looked explosive. That was one of the most surprising things to me. The other surprising thing was how much Javonte Williams was able to do. Now, he didn't have a full participation. He was limited. But I'm telling you, Bloom, as much as I can tell you, Javonte looked miles ahead of where I thought he was going to look, further emphasizing how by the beginning of training camp, he will be ready to be a full participant. He was looking good. Now, I'll be out there on Thursday to see how his body's been reacting. But that was the third day. Last Thursday was the third day of Broncos practice. So he's already been working out. But the Jeudy thing, we'll put a pin in. People are trying to make Greg Dulcich a thing. I would just say, don't. The team has to like him before your fantasy team can like him. So unless until that happens, and I'll alert you when it does, like anyone out there, I think Greg Dulcich, stop. Like, no, that will be a take. It'll be like Mark Jackson not putting Nikola Jokic on his MVP ballot at all. So, yeah, that'll be a bad take. So, for me, Javonte did more. I was surprised about how much he did. And then Jerry's fine. Sutton's explosive. Don't put your chips on Greg Dulcich. I guess that's my mini OTA report. And also, if I were to do it, Bloom, I'm not telling you what I saw, okay? Totally not telling you what I saw. But if it was up to me, I would have Samaje Perine in a 50-50 split with Javonte. That's just me. Even though I saw some good things from Javonte, just me, I would do a 50-50 split.
See, so you're familiar with Cockney rhyming slang?
Familiarize me.
So in Cockney slang, instead of saying the word, you say a word that rhymes with it. Like instead of dice, you say rats and mice.
Okay.
And there's sometimes a connection, right? But maybe we can come up with a rhyming slang system, the Lassie Bark rhyming slang system, for you to be able to tell us things without telling us things. Plausible deniability. I was talking about rats and mice, not dice. I think if we connect up all those points, Cease, it's that expect this offense to be a more realized version of what Sean Payton is trying to create instead of an under construction version. Like you said, Cease, if you have Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams fresh, wow, now that's a lot tougher to defend as far as teams needing to keep their stamina up against the run, and then the run setting up the pass. If you have a more athletic, enlivened Cortland Sutton on the outside, the play action passing game, if you have Tim Patrick, we know what he can do. Marvin Mims stretching the field. I think you can see these elements come together. I suppose if you want to argue for a Russell Wilson revival, these are good things for Russell Wilson, because again, he's not going to be part of a growing pains. The pains are going to be on behalf of the defense that has to figure out how to defend all these players. But the last thing I guess I'll say is, Cease, it is what you didn't say, right? If you're not allowed to say things, then we should pay more attention to what you didn't say. You didn't say anything positive about Jerry Jeudy.
Okay. All right. That's a new game we could play, huh? Oh, yeah.
Now, well, tune into the Audible to hear what we didn't say this week about. Can you clip that and put it in some sort of social media promotional thing?
Exactly.
Here's what Cecil didn't say. Cecil's positive notes on Jerry Jeudy and just quotation marks.
Right. With nothing. Anyway, keep an eye on it. It is the Audible. It is footballguys.com. And help us grow our YouTube channel. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. We've got great shows for you all week long right here. It is Football Guys. Of course, you can listen to the audio version of the Audible now with bonus shows. So you'll hear more Audible by subscribing, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, however you enjoy your podcasts. We say thank you. He is Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. I am at Cecil Amy. The show is at the Audible. Until next time, be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned, and as always, please stay frosty.